It's time for the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast with you as always, Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, NFL.com, Sam McDowell from the Kansas City Star. My name is Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB. I like this one. We're analyzing Brett Veach's draft record round by round. We're going to give him a grade for round one, a grade for round 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Basically taking a look at what the Chiefs have done right, what they have done wrong, how Brett Veach stacks up compared to the rest of the NFL. We're doing it right here, right now, the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast.
You are listening to the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Chiefs on planet Earth, breaking down the Chiefs like no one else can. Red, Gold, and Bold is hosted by Jeff Chadiha, Sam McDowell, and Soren Petro. Jeff Chadiha is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Sam McDowell is a columnist for the Kansas City Star. Soren Petro is the afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. The Red, Gold, and Bold podcast is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here are the hosts of the Best Chiefs podcast, Jeff Chadiha, Sam McDowell, and Soren Petro.
Thank you very much, Curtis. Off and running on another edition of the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. And gentlemen, taking a look at basically breaking down round by round how the Kansas City Chiefs have done under Brett Veach. Always like to kind of give a quick overview. Sam, what'd you learn from the exercise of breaking it down? Anything shock you, jump at you? What was your takeaway?
Yeah, I mean, I think Brett Veach has drafted really well over the years. I think we have to take into consideration as we do these grades is that they're picking at the back end. Like their task is more difficult than other GMs have been. I mean, Brett Veach has never picked in the top 22. And since, he took over in 2018, he has never picked in the top 22. I mean, he's only once in the second round picked in the top 20 picks. And it was his very first one ever. Like, he doesn't get the same draft capital that a lot of these other teams do. And so my grades are, I think, appropriately graded on that scale.
Well, I'm glad you agree with your own grades.
Appropriately, yes.
You're going to be arguing with yourself. This was going to take a long time here tonight.
I think I might have some better grades than other people, but we'll see. I'm interested to see where you guys are at.
I would have never thought that that would come from you, Jeff. What'd you learn out of doing this exercise?
Just that as a reminder, I'm not a huge draft person to begin with, and I know we put so much emphasis on it. But ultimately, when you start looking at the whole body of work, not just Brett Veach or any GM, it's probably going to look a lot like what we saw with Brett Veach. You're going to see hits, you're going to see big misses, and you're going to see probably a lot of players with big expectations who didn't live up to the hype. And so for me, it was more, I wasn't surprised by what I ended up seeing. It was probably harder to grade based on that because it's easy to give some of the misses really bad grades and to really come down hard on players who haven't played a whole lot, guys like FAU or Hunter Norzad or someone like that when you're trying to figure out the grades for certain rounds. But ultimately, it's what I thought it would be. He's done well in some areas and not so well in others.
Yeah, that I was a little surprised. I thought, we'll get to the third round. That kind of, I was like, I didn't really. That one surprised me a little bit. And my takeaway was I've always kind of felt, I'm a big believer in, more lottery tickets, and I'm an even bigger believer in that now. Yeah. Right. And going through it, like I coming in, I feel like they need to get more picks. And I think they throw away the late picks. They throw in the late picks to move up for guys. And I've always been like, I'm not really a huge fan of that. Right. Like I'd like to see them trade down, get more picks. He doesn't do that hardly ever. And this, I think, backed up my overall impression. Yeah. Did
Oh.
it
I don't.
shock you?
I don't know that I had the same takeaway from that impression. I was actually. I mean, we'll get to the later rounds, but
Let me ask you a quick question.
there's a lot of guys that aren't getting snaps ever on those later rounds.
Right. Okay. Perfect. And I'm so glad because I think we're going to come at it from different angles. Let me ask you this. Did either of you look at another team? Put
Yes.
another team through basically these same, not because there was an interesting point here. And this is, somebody said, where was it? Ben said, the way to look at a drafts is not only the players you take, but also the players you didn't take, which is, hey, DK Metcalf was there when you took McCole Hardman. Don't just grade McCole Hardman, add some production. And I think he's right. I think that is,
but add the busts in there too, though.
Yes. And which is where I was going to go next. And that is the fact that you don't necessarily like that's great. You remember the DK Metcalf, but there are lots of guys in that list that didn't do anything. That's a part of it as well. But I think there's some other strategies. Yeah, I'm intrigued by this. I want to hear what you have to say, but I disagree, and I'll tell you why. I think we're on the same track, but I think I've just gone to another level that I guess, Sam, you're not capable of. Would that be fair to say?
We'll see where we are. Now you asked for surprises. That would be the surprise.
I just love the confidence of Sam's. I wanted to have something to go back at him. All right, Sam, why don't you lead us off? Let's start with round one. Brett Veach. By the way, if people are not familiar with what round one has been for Brett Veach, Xavier Worthy, Felix Onyeudike-Uzomah, Trent McDuffie, George Karlaftis, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire represent his his first round draft picks. What say you on a grade?
Yeah, I'll back up my comment to potentially coming in higher than you guys right off the bat. I've got an A- for the first round, and there's obvious busts in there with Felix Onyeudike-Uzomah, who of course still has a year left, but 2 years left. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is not the player you'd want to take there if you could redo the draft. For a lot of us, it wasn't the player you wanted to take there without having to go through the exercise of redoing the draft. Although I will remind people he was a productive running back, not a first-round running back, but a productive running back before that hip injury in New Orleans just totally altered his career. But McDuffie is a two-time All-Pro, one first team, one second team. George Karlaftis is at least, I don't think any of us would be stunned if George Karlaftis got to a Pro Bowl at some point in his career if he snuck in there as an alternate and potentially gets in there. Xavier Worthy, I feel the same way about. I'm not going to say he's a Pro Bowl wide receiver, but it's not going to stun me if his career's over and he gets there once. And, like I said, they have not picked in the top 22 ever. They've only picked in the before 30 twice. And it was to get McDuffie at 23 and Xavier Worthy at 28. So McDuffie's got the most snaps, second most defensive snaps of any player in the 2022 class, and he's one behind Quentin Lake for the Chargers. Karlaftis is 18th on that list. I think, like I said, I'm grading on a scale, and my scale is the fact that they pick really late. And if you can get, 4 out of the 6 guys to be starters from year one on, I don't think that's terrible.
And so again, the letter grade was?
I got an A- for round one.
A-. Okay. All right. That's interesting. I do think where they pick is a big part of it. Jeff, I'm going to guess that you did not have an A-.
I had a B+. I was close. I don't put as much weight on where they pick because I think everybody's got a different circumstance when they draft. And I put it more on what are you getting out of the players you get there. And so, yeah, is it hard to find Hall of Famers at 32? Sure, but I'm not grading them on finding Hall of Famers. I'm grading them on finding productive players. And so, yeah, if it was just McDuffie and Karlaftis, it'd be A+. But unfortunately, there is a Clyde Edwards-Helaire in there who was a huge bust, given what he walked into, the situation he walked into. He was handed an opportunity to be the featured back on an offense that was the best in the NFL at the time and couldn't do much of anything with it. And Felix Onyeudike-Uzomah is not, it's very hard to see him being a not even a top flight player, just a productive player, being a starter. And I think Xavier Worthy would if he had I like him. I think he's got promise and potential, but I'm not ready to say he's a future star yet. I think if he was in the Rashee Rice category coming off, if he did what Rashee Rice did in his first season, I'd probably say A-. But right now, I'm probably being more cautious with B+ with this group.
What did you do with the trade part? Did you just deal with the picks that they had?
Yeah, because then it just got super complicated. Yeah. Then it just got too complicated.
All right, I want to make sure that that's the view that we had, is that we're just dealing with. So like they had no first round pick in 2021, so we're not factoring in, which when you consider, and it does get complicated to Jeff's point, because they got picks coming back, and I remember Eric Eager saying it was the equivalent of like a high second. That basically, when you consider what the Chiefs got back in draft picks with them and all the different picks. So just for clarification, like Orlando Brown in 2021 is not being listed as part of the equation here. We're just dealing with the picks that they actually had and that they actually took. Overall, I do think that's a factor, right? And I think that's part of the equation. By the way, Orlando Brown solidified a line. He wasn't fantastic, wasn't a Hall of Famer, but he wasn't terrible either. I think that's important to consider in this equation as well. We'll do that when we, I don't know what, go with team building or something like that overall, as opposed to the complete big picture of everything that's going on. I gave them a B+ in round number 1. And I do think that Trent McDuffie, George Karlaftis draft is really important because it does a lot of lifting in this case. Xavier Worthy, like what I've seen so far, still worried about being hurt all the time. So 1 year doesn't, make the whole draft, but 600 plus yards, 6 touchdowns, pretty good start, but he's going to need to take a step forward, even being a late pick. The Clyde Edwards-Helaire pick is terrible, though. I mean, and I know they wanted to trade down, but to the point of, some of our viewers that said, hey, it's the guys you didn't take. I mean, we know that one hurt.
Yeah.
Right. That was one that was a big one, because there were a couple of really good wide receivers, T. Higgins, Michael Pittman, that are guys that they could have used. And where would they be now? Did they not take Sky Moore and they take someone else? Like, all those things compound themselves. So
even other running backs.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's not just that even you pick a different position, which of course should be the exercise. That's what you mentioned. But I mean, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8th among running backs in career yards. And, he was the first one off the board.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think overall, I would like to see what I don't, as a Chiefs fan, want to see them pick 7, 8, 9, 10, but I wonder how different it would be, when they go up there, because we just have not seen Brett Veach make those picks, right? He wasn't the guy who picked 10 for Patrick Mahomes. That was John Dorsey. We know he was in on the mix, but we haven't seen it. So, I mean, I think it is difficult to judge. Like if suddenly, the Chiefs sold, or Andy or Brett Veach said, I'm going to take a year off, and then he was coming back into the league and he was taking over a team that was on the bottom, you wouldn't really know what you were getting with him as a guy who's going to make those top 5 picks, because he just hasn't done it. So I think that's intriguing.
Yeah. And I mean, to give people a sense that it's not just the receivers out there, because T. Higgins is the one that gets mentioned all the time. And I get it. First of all, T. Higgins is a star wide receiver. He's also the player taken directly after Clyde Edwards-Helaire. But even when you go through that exercise, it's T. Higgins, Michael Pittman, then DeAndre Swift, Xavier McKinney, Kyle Duggar, Gross Matos, and Robert Hunt are the next picks. Like, you take any of those guys on the team right now.
Yeah. No, it would be different. All right, I think it starts to get a little bit more interesting here. Second round, he's had more draft capital to work with in the second round. Going back, 24, Kingsley Suamataia, 23, Rashee Rice, 22, Sky Moore and Brian Cook, 21. Here's the highlight: Nick Bolton and Creed Humphrey, picks 58 and 63. 2020, Willie Gay, starter for basically his entire time here. McCole Hardman and Juan Thornhill in 2019. Breeland Speaks in 2018. Sam, second round, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I've got an A for the second round. I mean, you've got Rashee Rice, Nick Bolton, Creed Humphrey. I still think McCole Hardman got his value. You got your, almost your value out of Juan Thornhill. Let me put in perspective, like Willie Gay, for example, just to give people an idea of what the typical production out of this draft class is. So Willie Gay gets picked, I think 63rd overall that year. There's only 8 guys taken after him who have more career tackles than he does. 8 guys in 5 rounds who have more career tackles of any position than Willie Gay does. There's only 1 linebacker taken after him in the next 5 rounds who has more career interceptions than Willie Gay does. There are no linebackers taken after him, off-ball linebackers taken after him who have more career sacks than Willie Gay does. Like, this is not a bad pick at 63rd. And that's why the order of where you pick him in the round has to matter, because that's why. Like, you're grading him on what else could you have gotten. Now, I compared him to linebackers. You could have taken another position. Like, there's no argument whatsoever there. But, like, you can't grade Willie Gay as a bad pick when you consider everything I just said about what's taken after him. Like, we all on this podcast have questioned Brian Cook and his, whether or not he's a good starter for the Chiefs. But the point is, he is a 3-year starter. He's getting ready to be a 4-year starter for him. You got him, late second round. Like, you will take an okay starter in late second round that can start for you for 3 to 4 years. That's not a bad pick there either. So I think this is, there's one other class that we'll get to that I think he's done better in, but he's done really well in second round picks over the year.
By the way, I highlighted some of the grades some of the listeners are giving us. If you're catching us via the podcast later, remember you can be a part of the conversation. Tuesday nights, 9:30 p.m. Central is when we're up and running and streaming live. But I have to put this one up. Tommy says, Willie Gay was underappreciated. I don't know if you remember, but I believe Tommy said that Willie Gay would go down to New Orleans and have 10+ sacks, that he was going to become an edge rusher. Willie Gay may have been overappreciated by Tommy. I do like Willie Gay, the player. He was, a good coverage linebacker. He was a handful of times off the field, but I think it was a good pick. I'm with you. I've got an A on the second round. I went kind of around and around. Kingsley Suamataia is a killer, but if maybe I should make it an A- just because of his deplorable showing this year. But
you got 3 years left.
when they trade up, he does. But I'm not as optimistic that he's going to be the guy at guard.
And I agree with you. They shouldn't just hand it to him. But let's say he does turn into a 3-year starter at guard, and he's picked the second to last, or was it the second to last? I think pick of that second round. Would you take a starting guard for 3 years in that pick?
Yes, I would.
I agree.
I would. But so,
and it's still a question. It's still a question for whether it will be. I totally agree with you on that part.
And I am going to make it an A-. I've talked myself into it.
That fast, huh?
Yeah, because I'm like
all on Kingsley.
I bounce around. I've changed the grades on these so much that if you wait 5 minutes from now, they might be so different. Yeah. When I'm like, well, no, but I do think, and Jeff, I know I kind of jumped in here over you, but the Rashee Rice is good, but he is going to get suspended, right? That's part of it. You took a player at risk, and he's been at risk. Sky Moore was a bust. Brian Cook has been a jag. Let's be honest. He plays, but he doesn't play at a high level, right? He plays. He's out there, but you talked a lot, Sam, about dinging him this past year. Nick Bolton and Creed Humphrey are the only guys on this list that got a second contract. The only guys on this list that got a second contract.
Well, I think Rashee Rice will get a second contract.
Are you confident that that's a player that you want to give a lot of money?
You just mean a second contract from the Chiefs then?
From the Chiefs, yeah.
Yeah, getting a second contract from the Chiefs, which means you played at a high enough level that they go, yeah, we got to have you. And Nick Bolton was a guy that I think a lot of us are like, I'm not sure he should be getting that second contract, not for the dollars. So
yeah, and look, I was on that list. I mean, I kind of view it as who can get a multi-year deal somewhere. To me, it's like, Juan Thornhill gets a multi-year deal, but I mean, I don't know what Brian Cook's going to get. McCole Hardman had to accept a 1-year deal. I don't know. Willie Gay had to accept a 1-year deal. That's what I look at, is who's willing to invest in these guys for multiple years.
And I think that speaks to what the player is, but you're not drafting. You're drafting to make the Kansas City Chiefs better.
Oh, but I mean, that's how you get into Nick Bolton contracts, is because you feel like you have to, protect your draft pick there. And
agreed. I'm not giving him credit for Nick Bolton's contract. In fact, he is but I think he is a worthy player that you want to have on your team. I think they overpaid for him. You're right. It is. How much are we going to, grade that? But I think, like, listen, when you when you take a look at Breland Speaks stunk, and that's okay.
That's the one right there. We're not talking about him that much, right?
Yeah, and that's okay because those.
What are you talking about? He was like the USL defensive player of the year.
That's right. How did I forget that part?
Yeah, Jeff, what do you have round 2?
B plus. B
Okay.
plus. For a lot of the same reasons you went down to an A minus. I think Rashee Rice swings it for me. I love the potential of him, but I don't know what he's going to be moving forward. Is he going to be an off the field problem continually? Is he going to be as productive as we saw in that first year? And so I just wasn't as comfortable making those projections about him. Creed and Bolton certainly drive this one up. But Breland Speaks and Suamataia bring it way down for me. Suamataia is an epic failure right now, and it's like I'm just not certain if he's not a guard, then it's really one of the worst picks that Brett Veach has ever, maybe the worst pick he's ever made, surpassing the other guy on the list, Breland Speaks. So if you got 2 guys in the second round, along with a Sky Moore, as Soren mentioned, along with a Brian Cook, he's a marginal starter. You start looking at that list. And maybe that's the way I approached it. Who raises it up? The Boltons and the Creeds, and who brings it down? I just think that Suamataia, Speaks, Sky Moore, those guys are like anchors around the neck of Brett Veach in this round, and they keep him from getting an A from me, or A minus, for those reasons.
And so again, one more time, what you give him?
B plus.
All right, and that's still, by the way, I'll point out a pretty good grade. I will tell you that. Listen, when it comes to your parking lots, make a good first impression, good last impression with our friends from Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the greater Kansas City area. Nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Locally owned and making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Let Gann educate you about the most cost-effective way to solve your parking lot problems. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews. Every project comes with a written warning. Gann Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer and helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. Find Gann online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. At Whataburger, the flavor you've been asking for is back. For a limited time, check out the chicken fajita tacos or grab the Monterey Melt with all those same great flavors you've been missing. Also, for a limited time, check out the all-new Mexican hot chocolate coffee. Or you can try the Mexican hot chocolate shake. That's right, sweet, rich cocoa. Warm Mexican cinnamon, notes of brown sugar, and a light kick of chili, swirled in a creamy blend of vanilla ice cream. And don't forget, you can get all your Whataburger favorites and more by downloading the Whataburger app with the QR code. Whataburger, proud sponsor of the Red, Gold, and Bold. All right, let's keep things going here. Round number 3. Sam, where do you go with round number 3 for people who are not familiar with the round 3 picks? Wanya Morris am I forgetting? They didn't have one in 2024. Is that right? I want to make sure I didn't cross somebody off.
They did not. No,
that's correct. Yeah. 2 fourth rounders.
Yeah. 2023, Wanya Morris. 2022, Leo Chenal. 2020, Lucas Nyang. 2019, Colin Saunders. 2018, Derek Noddy. 2018, Dorian O'Daniel. 3rd round, Sam.
Yeah, I've got a D plus in this round.
What's the letter?
D plus.
D as in dog.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you wanted to try and make an argument for this round, you would say, you've had 5 players and 2 of them have turned into regular starters, even though you're picking at the back end of the round. I think when you looked at the number of where the Chiefs are picking, you would say 40% of your players turn into regular starters. That's pretty good. But they haven't had any standouts. Like Leo Chenal still isn't a guy who plays 50% of the snaps. Colin Saunders isn't a guy who's played 50% of the snaps. 0 of these players have ever played 50% of the snaps in a single season. So that's tough to overcome, and that's why I've got it at a D plus.
Okay, D plus for Sam. Jeff,
I was a little bit nicer about this than Sam was. I gave him a C minus, just because I think Chenal helped them win a Super Bowl. I think Chenal is, I agree, is not a regular starter and may not ever be that, but he seems to play big in big moments. And so I like that about him. I think that helps. I think you've got some guys like who just Colin Saunders is in that list, right?
Mm-hmm.
Colin
Give me the list.
Saunders.
You want the list again?
I
Wanya
have it
Morris,
for you.
Leo Chenal, Lucas Niang, Colin Saunders, Derek Nottie, Dorian O'Daniel.
Yeah. So Nottie and Saunders have been serviceable players as defensive linemen. Wanya Morris is been pretty bad. I just don't think that this, like, in this group, there's as much variance as there were in the first 2 rounds for me. I think the busts were
because
not
none of them are great.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. So it wasn't like you had these huge busts and these huge stars. You just had these guys in the middle. But I didn't have a problem with that. So for me, I was a lot nicer to that group in terms of they found some people who could help them win some games, and the guys who couldn't weren't as disastrous as some of those first and second round misses.
Yeah, I'm on the C- grade as well here. I did, at one point I had a D, at one point I had a D plus. I don't think I ever got above C-, so maybe I'll regret being this generous with it. I will point out, I'm going to tell you that this is a round where I don't like that they don't have more picks, right? I think that's a problem.
That's good. That's a fair point.
This year. I mean, they've got an early 3rd round pick this year. I mean, I actually considered grading this as incomplete purely because this is the first time we've seen them pick so early in a round here. Like,
I hear you on that, but I mean, once you and listen, and I do acknowledge, and the reason why I came off the D is when you look at the pick numbers for it is so for round 3, whoops, I'm over on a different team I had. Hang on. Round 3, it's picked 92, 103, 96, 84, 75. That was Derek Nottie, right? That's up there towards the top of round 3, and 100 for Dorian O'Daniel. So there is a lot of the bottom round.
Nottie was pre Veach though.
Did I have? No, he's 2018.
Oh, was he? Okay. I had him at okay. Yeah, I thought he came in with Mahomes then. Okay.
Yeah.
He came in the year after.
I copied and pasted this, so
you're right. You're right. I didn't have him on my list.
Okay, just want to make sure.
So he's a forgettable guy.
But he did start a couple Super Bowls. I mean, to be honest, I didn't have Nottie on my list when I graded this. That might improve. Like, we all have thought that it's been, past due for Derek Nottie to move on, but that's not a bad 3rd round pick.
It's not a great 3rd round pick. Like, they kept playing him. I do feel I don't know what they saw in Derek Nottie. I'm going to be honest with you.
I agree with you.
So he did, and that's what's one of the things that makes this kind of interesting in how you look at it. So one of the things I did was I took their Pro Football Reference does a what do they call it? Wins
approximate value.
Yeah, the approximate value, win approximate value, and then they have a cumulative number for them, and I divided it by how many years they've been there, and so I have their number on what they average per year. I added it up for each round, right, and then got an average for each round. And as I look at it, Derek Nottie gets, he gets a good grade. Their average grade. So, like, give me an example. The first round, 5.72. Don't worry about what the numbers are. Just listen to how it drops off. 5.72 in round 1, 4.45 in round 2. Not that big a drop off when you consider how far down they go. Then a 3.18 though in round 3. They really do kind of fall. And it's because guys aren't playing snaps. And you're not playing snaps because you're not that good. Derek Nottie is a lot of their value. And I think he was a player you wanted to replace almost the entire time you had him. Right. So
yeah, because a lot of that approximate value is like being on the field for good producing teams. So I like, Soren, that you've compared it within the same team because they're all in that same unit. It's not a great stat to compare across different teams, for example.
But I will tell you that so they come down and I think they need more picks. I think this is a round where they can flourish. I think they need to quit, all the maneuvering around and make sure they keep the picks. And I think that's really going to show itself when we get to the later rounds coming up here, because it's really frustrating to me after we come out of round 3. It's really going to start to show up. And in my opinion, that's where I think we're going to have a difference of opinion on some stuff. But round 3, you're still in that top 100. And I will tell you the one thing that this exercise showed me is that the top 100 is important, right? You got to hit there because there is a big fall off after the top 100. And And so I know they're at the bottom of it. And so there might be years there's only 85 guys, but there might be years there's 115 guys. But they've got to do better in round 3. And I think one of the things that they could be doing is if they could get out of round 1 more often and get more picks in round 2. Like as we look at the top 3 rounds, isn't the takeaway I have is more second round picks, right? If you're going to be trading up, trade up from the 3rd round to the 2nd round because you're way better in the 2nd round. Use those picks instead of moving 3 and 4 spots for a guy who is not appreciably better than anybody else. Make gains to get up into the 2nd round. That's where you're effective. So drop down into the 2nd round when you can because you do a good job there and get more draft picks. And if you're going to be moving up, move up into that 2nd round because that is where you're hitting, right? That is your good spot. And that's the one thing that this told me is if you're going to move, stop with the 3 or 4 pick things and start making definitive moves up into the 2nd round. And I think that comes back to something they need more draft picks to be able to do those kind of things. And I think the lack of draft picks is and I struggled with how to put that into my grade. So that's one of the reasons why I struggled on how to give them a grade here in round 3 was they should have more 3rd round picks. And it's difficult. You got to go case by case to figure it out, but they definitely need more 3rd round picks. That for me is a no-brainer.
Yeah, I mean, I think the year they did that, what you're talking about, Strin, is how they got Rashee Rice. I mean, they did trade up in the 2nd round rather than, in the 1st round. And we do see them make moves over the middle of the draft as well. I mean, covering the Chiefs draft, I assume I haven't covered other teams, is a different experience because the Chiefs could be on the clock at any time because they're constantly trading within the draft. Right. And it's unbelievably rare that you're expecting the Chiefs to pick and all of a sudden they've traded out. It's much more common that, hey, oh my God, the Chiefs are on the clock now all of a sudden.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Let's move on. Let's go to round number 4. Sam, where do you sit on round number 4?
Yeah, this one I feel like more than any other, we have just this scale. Like we go from all pro caliber L'Jarius Sneed to, do you remember they had Josh Kando on the team? And like everything else is just very definitively fine between. So I've got a B+ overall, but L'Jarius Sneed is just totally carrying this round. I mean, I think Jaden Hicks is going to be a starter. The jury's out on exactly what kind of starter he will be. I think he'll be a serviceable starter, not a Pro Bowl player. I think Shamari Connor is a good 4th round pick. I mean, a guy who can start. Now, you need to surround him with good talent to make him a serviceable starter. I feel the same way about Joshua Williams. You've got Armani Watts in this group. You've got Joshua Kando in this group. And if the jury's out on Jaden Hicks, it's certainly still out on Jared Wiley, who they got last year, who we saw have 1 catch before his knee injury last year. This was a hard class to grade because it is just such a wide spectrum with, there's one player really carrying it. But that player, I think, has done enough, particularly when the whole reason you're picking at the early in the 3rd round this year is because you still are seeing the benefits of that L'Jarius Sneed trade, but that upped it to a B+ for me.
Okay. B+ for Sam. Jeff, where do you go?
I gave it a B, and for a lot of the same reasons Sam just mentioned. L'Jarius Sneed is the poster child for this round for me. And because his presence helped them win a championship, his lack of presence probably prevented them from winning, getting a three-peat. And it felt as if, and maybe I'm different than you guys on this, it felt as if once I got to this round, it was more about, are they getting really good value out of people or not? And so I didn't attach as much significance to the players that didn't turn out, the Joshua Kando type players. I think it's harder the lower you go in the draft to get really good players. But obviously they got a stud in Sneed. I do have very high expectations for Jaden Hicks based off what I've seen so far. It's a very small sample size, but given that they let Justin Reed walk and brought him in as the replacement, that he seems like a player who's got a bright future. And I'll give Shamari Connor the benefit of the doubt that he was horrible last year because he was put in a bad spot and asked to do things he wasn't good at the year before. He was much more productive and promising. So I could see him in a different role being a better player. And so for me, those 3 guys are what I base that grade off of. So I went a solid B.
Yeah, I think you do make a good point about Connor.
Same here.
I'm with you guys. I got a B+ in this round. I'm optimistic on Jared Wiley. I liked what we were hearing and seeing before he got hurt. But Hicks looks like he's going to be a player. Connor has been a player, had a down year this year. I'm optimistic that he's going to get put into a position to be more successful here moving forward. L'Jarius Sneed is a home run. Josh Kando along with BJ Thompson. Like I wish they would stop with those kind of picks because they're not very good at it. But Josh Kando in there, Armani Watts at least was a good special teams player. I think this has been a pretty good round for them, and I think they do well. And my little value chart, I was mentioning the 5.72, 4.45, 3.18. They're a 1.49, and that is a drop off, but that's a drop off. I looked at other teams. That's a drop off that happens league wide. I mean, it really does. After the top 100, it comes off, and they are getting serviceable players. And I'm just going to tell you, I'm going to give you the peek under the covers of the next couple of rounds. Again, fourth round, 1.49, fifth round, 1.15, sixth round, 1.75, seventh round, 1.88. And here in the fourth round, getting players is important. But what that tells you, and I set this to set the tone for what we're going to talk about in rounds 5, 6, and 7, they're all kind of the same. Like rounds 4 for the Chiefs, 4, 5, 6, 7, there's almost no difference, right? Because we can look in there and you're going to find, we're going to get to it. I don't want to spoil some of the players there, but you're going to find there's some good players in each of the next few rounds. They kind of get one out of his whole class. He's got one in each round. They're kind of all the same. And I'll bring it up now because this is when some of these trades start happening. Sam, you said, well, there's a lot of misses. There's a lot of guys without zeros in it. Exactly. It's why you need more picks. So stop giving them away to move up 3 spots because we're not throwing A+ around on all the guys that they moved up for because the move ups are Kingsley Suamataia, they're Wanya Morris. Yeah. There are lots of guys that they moved up for. They're McCole Hardman. They're guys that didn't end up being home runs. And so to me, when I see that, there is a L'Jarius Sneed in the 4th round. Yeah, there is a Noah Gray, a solid player in the 5th round. Yeah, there is a Trey Smith in the 6th round. Like, stop giving those picks away because you're not hitting high enough with your return on what you're getting. And what this says to me is you need lots of those things. Like, that is one of the things that the Rams are benefiting from. And I looked at the Rams. They've got tons and tons of picks in these rounds. And they've got tons and tons of misses. Yeah, they have so many picks that they also have all these guys that they hit. And I don't know that they get Puka Nacua unless they have like 3, 4, 6 round picks. That is where I think the Chiefs are missing is they understand, I think, that these rounds are all kind of the same, but they don't understand that there are still values in there, but nobody knows who they are. So just throw numbers at it, and they never give themselves the numbers really other than one draft. And it's been by far their best draft. When they had a lot of numbers to throw at it, that's when they did the best.
Yep. And the Rams strategically make the move that they believe in living in those rounds, the 4, 5, and 6. They know that's where they got to make their hay if they're going to be very aggressive with free agent signees and how they spend their money. It's a great point. And you look at Brad Holmes, who's a former Rams exec, who's the GM of the Lions now. He has the same philosophy. That's how he found Amon-Ra St. Brown.
I'll give you an example. The Chiefs have made 7 6-round picks under Brett Veach. Do you know how many the Rams have made in that time?
10.
14.
Wow.
14. Right. And so when you dig through there and, you find in the 5th round, they've made 2, 4, 6, 8, 12. So they got Puka Nacua. Yeah, because they just threw numbers at it. They also got guys you never heard of, Brennan Jackson, Nick Hampton. But what they seem to recognize is we'll throw a bunch of numbers at them. We'll get them into camp. We'll figure it out. We'll figure out which guys are the players and which guys aren't. And I think that's something that Brett Veach and I think the rest of the league needs to be looking at what the Rams are doing because we said it, Jeff, and I know, Sam, we've talked about it with you on the radio and everything, but we went over it with Eager. Like the idea was, oh my God, the Rams were just this all-in run for 1 year. And in reality, every time they were making moves, they were getting these lower picks and they have sustained. They had 1 year where they were down and otherwise, and their quarterback was hurt that year, which how many teams are going to survive their quarterback? They've really done a nice job of sustaining their team and they've done it with a lot of lower round picks.
Yeah. I would go ahead, Jeff.
I would say, and letting go of star players. Other key part of that, Jalen Ramsey, Cooper Kupp, time comes, you're going out the door.
Yeah. I think 2 things on that, Soren. One is you have to be comfortable cutting draft picks from the year out. They cut Kamal Hadden this last year. They cut Cornell Powell a few years ago. If you're going to have those that quantity of rookies, you're going to have to be comfortable cutting draft picks because you're going to have to say, we're just going to take the best guys, and therefore some guys aren't going to make it. You're going to try and stash them on the practice squad. The second thing that I think is the most illustrative of your point, because I know we'll get to this round, when we get to round 7, we will compare it to round 6, 5, 4, even up to 3, and say, take the round completely out of it. Mm-hmm. Which players would you rather have?
Yes.
This group they've had in round 7 or this group in round 3. There's no comparison between round 7, 6, 5, 4, and 3, which group you'd rather have.
Yeah, no, I agree. All right, let's press on. I wanted to make that point and set the tone for where we're going on this, but let's move on to round number 5 to keep you up to date with who the Chiefs have taken in round 5. Hunter Norzad in 24, B.J. Thompson in 2023. 22, it was Darian Kennard. 21, it was Noah Gray. Cornell Powell was in 21, and Michael Dana in 2020. What do you give him in round 5, Sam?
Yeah, I've got a B. I toggled between a B and a B minus. But when I looked at what everyone else has been taking in those rounds, because, I'd encourage people, if they do this exercise, to go through Pro Football Reference, for example. It just lists all the draft and has everyone's stats next to it. Something I found interesting about Noah Gray, for example, he's got 1,000 career yards. No player after him has more than 650. And he's a tight end. I'm talking about no receiver even does. Nobody has more than 2 receiving touchdowns. He's got 9. Michael Dana is 9th in sacks among that entire draft class. He's taken 177th overall. Like everyone else is taking him like the first 115 picks. So, but you mentioned the recent record. I mean, Soren, reread just those last 3 years that they've gotten out of the 5th round.
Last 3 years in the 5th round: Hunter Norzad, B.J. Thompson, Darian Kennard.
Yeah, I mean, so I like I said, I wanted to go B minus for a long time, but then when I looked at what everyone else is getting out of this round, there's a lot of those guys when you look at Pro Football Reference, and it's just a bunch of dashes. Like they've got nothing out of those players. So like it's not uncommon to have a lot of these misses, and they've toggled in 2 guys that have gotten multi-year deals.
Okay. Jeff.
No, it's okay to grade them harshly for their misses, regardless of what's going on around the league. And that's how I looked at it. I gave him a C, and I agree with Sam. I think when you've got Dana and Noah Gray getting second contracts, this says a lot about what kind of players they were, when they came in and what they've done for you. And I think that both those guys, they're not going to be stars for you, but they can be productive, and they will have to be productive the next couple of years for this team to continue to win games. So I like that about them. But man, these other guys either haven't ever played or may never ever see the field, and that's a factor as well when you're picking in the 5th round, because as you mentioned, Puka Nacua was a 5th round pick, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously he's a high level 5th round pick, but yeah, they've got a lot of guys in this round that are just bums.
Yeah. I
wasn't that high on him. I only gave him a B.
Well,
I didn't give him an A or anything.
Okay.
Well, I mean, listen, probably Jeff, if this was like Olympic diving or something, they'd be throwing out Sam and throwing me out, throw out the high, throw out the low, and then take the average of everybody else. Because I got a D+. I think this round sucks horribly.
Wow.
And
Wow.
You guys make me a little bit nervous.
No, I think that's fair. Yeah.
You make me a little bit nervous that like, oh, maybe I need to take a closer look. Like I did not. Sam's point about like, I wish I'd done what Sam did, and maybe I would have had a kinder grade or a higher grade on this. But I had a D+ because I look at what they've gotten in the 6th and 7th round and say, just take those guys. And this round looks better. Yeah. Sam's point is right. When we get to the 7th round, like you're going to see a very different grade for them in the 7th round, but they're on the board. And I think this is a round where, this is where I think other teams are taking risks on character and getting rewards. They take risk on character too high. And I also think that are you not scouting the small schools? Like, because they are a big school drafting team. Like they like the power leagues, but I mean, when they do go small school, I mean, I say that and then like, whoa, what do you want? More B.J. Thompsons? No, right? That they want Stephen F. Austin there. I think he might have, did he transfer from, I thought there was a transfer. Maybe you just transferred from like UAB or something. It wasn't. But anyway, but like, Penn State, Kentucky, Duke, Clemson, Michigan. Michael Dana, if Michael Dana didn't spend a year at Michigan where apparently he did nothing.
BJ Thompson was Baylor before.
It was Baylor. I knew it was green and gold. I knew that. But would they have even touched Michael Dana if he hadn't stopped in at Michigan for a year? Like this round's bad. Like they have to get better in the fifth round, right? Because there's no excuse if you're doing better in the sixth and seventh, you're prioritizing the wrong things at this point in the draft. So I may be regretting that D+. It may be a little bit harsh, but I went D+ on that one. So we'll see. All right, let's go to round number 6. We start with let's see, I forgot to update that on my scorecard here. Hang on. Round number 6. Sam, the 6th round, Kamal Hadden in 24, Keandre Coburn in 23, Trey Smith in 21, Rashad Fenton and Darwin Thompson in 2019. In 18, it was Tremon Smith and Khalil McKenzie. Where do you go with round 6?
Yeah, I mentioned that round 4 was a tough one. There was going to be one more that was going to be tough to grade. This is a really tough round to grade. And I was sitting there thinking in my head, like, what's the trade-off? What else do I need out of guys if I get like a Pro Bowl caliber player in round 6? Because that's a rarity. But we're not talking about like a 4. I think I was thinking like how many years can I deal with getting nothing else out of it? I mean, Rashad Fenton was okay. Like how many years can I go with getting nothing out of everyone else if I can get a Pro Bowl caliber out of round 6? I think the most you can stretch it is 4 years. And this has been almost twice that. So I've got him for a B- in round 6 because Trey Smith is a really good player. He's going to be the highest paid right guard in the league. But I mean, give me somebody else in this round. And Fenton, they got another draft pick out of. So like that's okay. And I even think a B- might be kind of generous here. I even think maybe it potentially should. It's just like I said, it's a tough one because Trey Smith is such a great value pick in the 6th round, and you've got nothing else out of anyone else here.
All right, Jeff.
Yeah, it was C- for me, and it felt weird because I was on the other side of it with Trey Smith saying, "Man, it's like he's so good." Am I being too harsh because nobody else is rising up to his level? And ultimately, there's just nothing else in this group that really, like even Rashad Fenton. It's like I can't even remember a play he made for this team, except when he got burnt in like a Tennessee Titans game when they lost like in the last seconds when I think this Super Bowl year 2019. Like he's the only other named player in there, but there's some a lot.
Well, what's interesting about that, Jeff, because you mentioned the only other player, like who's actually played the most games out of that class, and it's like not even close. Is Tremon Smith's played 100 games in the NFL?
He has?
Yes. And
as a kick returner?
Mostly, yes.
Yes.
And 14 of
them.
14. He's played with the Broncos. I think he's played with the Texans. And 14 of them, all of 14 of them, those 100 were with the Chiefs because remember they brought him in
return.
Yeah, they brought him as a cornerback. They tried to use him as a wide receiver. Yeah, I mean it's a weird one. They've had a couple guys like that are on this list. Coburn's now on another team too, obviously.
Yeah, but I actually like that pick. I mean, at least he's a. They're like, okay, there's something
Which
here.
one?
We just got to figure it out, right? And they couldn't
pick?
figure it out. And they moved him in a trade.
He's talking about. He asked which one, Stern. He's talking about Tremon Smith.
Tremon Smith. Smith.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, Jim. But they moved him in a trade to the Falcons, right? Like that was when their D-back class, wasn't he the guy?
Rashad Fenton got traded to the Falcons.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm getting them confused. But I mean, he is obviously a guy that like they saw something in him, and I actually don't mind that pick. My grade for this round is a C, and it's all Trey Smith. I mean, I think this one and Keandre Coburn, it is curious as to why they let him go. I mean, I think the reason they let him go is I would love to sit down in one room and talk to Steve Spagnuolo about Colin Saunders and Keandre Coburn, and then sit down in another room and talk to the scouts and Brett Veach, because neither one of those guys look like Steve Spagnuolo guys. Like he likes long linear guys, and somebody in that room likes bowling ball, nose tackle looking guys, right?
Barney Rubble types.
I can tell you why they cut him, because they needed like 15 wide receivers on that team coming out of training camp.
That's right.
That's why they cut Keandre Coburn.
And it was a mistake because the guy, he can play a little, right? But this class is all Trey Smith. Kamal Haddon, nothing there. Darwin Thompson actually had a moment.
That was the guy I was trying. He was the running back, right?
Uh-huh.
With the weird nickname, or like what was it?
Oh, what did they
Holtz used to call him? It's like the Beaver or the Badger or something like that. The Mini Mike guy was some kind of weird. The Termite.
He had where he came in late in a game. Somebody was out and he didn't play, but he came in late and he got some touches and carries and actually looked pretty good.
Yeah,
in like a mop-up role. But the thing that I remember about Darwin Thompson, and I think is notable about this round, is in talking about Darwin Thompson, Brett Veach was very happy in getting him. But he talked about how 9 picks before they almost traded up for him. Right?
Oh,
and I have the audio somewhere. And him talking about it, and it's like, they held their water, they stayed, and they got him. Please stay, and you'll get him more than you think. And if you don't get him, you'll get somebody else. Like, they almost moved up for Darwin Thompson. And we know all the times they moved up that it hasn't worked out. Like, I at some point, it's like he is a goldfish. He does not remember last year's draft. Every draft is a new shiny, we're setting sail on a new voyage. Boy, we don't know what's going to come. Who knows what's out here when you head out into the ocean. It's like, no, you do know a little bit. Like, remember some of these things that you've been through and apply it moving forward. So I think that'll be interesting to see. We're going to get to what we think about, what's going to make this year a good one here in a second. First, I'll tell you about our friends at Whataburger.
At Whataburger, the flavor you've been asking for is back. For a limited time, check out the chicken fajita tacos or grab the Monterey Melt with all those same great flavors you've been missing. Also, for a limited time, check out the all-new Mexican hot chocolate coffee, or you can try the Mexican hot chocolate shake. That's right, sweet, rich cocoa, warm Mexican cinnamon, notes of brown sugar, and a light kick of chili, swirled in a creamy blend of vanilla ice cream. And don't forget, you can get all your Whataburger favorites and more by downloading the Whataburger app with the QR code. Whataburger, proud sponsor of the Red, Gold, and Bold.
Gann Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the greater Kansas City area. Nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Locally owned and making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Let Gann educate you about the most cost-effective way to solve your parking lot problems. With free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty, Gann Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer and helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. Find Gann online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. All right, let's get to our statement on what will make this year a successful one. First, we need to finish out this year's draft. That is, or the previous drafts. Let's go to round 7. 2024, C.J. Hansen. 23, Nick Jones. 2022, Jalen Watson and Isaiah Pacheco, along with Najee Johnson. 3 picks there in round 7. 2020, Tharkarius Keys, Bo Peep Keys, you might know him as. And 2019, Nick Allegretti. Sam, what do you got?
Yeah, I mean, this is an A+. I mean, if you can get this out of your 7th round, I think we'd be hard-pressed if we went through all 32 teams to find somebody that's gotten this much value out of the 7th round with Pacheco, Watson, Nick Allegretti. I mean, I know Najee Johnson has his complaints. He's a 7th-round pick. So, yeah, I mean, this is terrific value out of the 7th round. And, I mean, like I said, compared to the 6th, 5th, 4th, and 3rd round, you'll take this group over those group. This is the best evidence of the point that you made earlier, Soren.
Okay, Jeff?
I gave it an A, along the same lines that you're getting a starting running back. You're getting a player who started for you at corner this year. Jalen Watson, Allegretti helped you in a pinch last year in the Super Bowl, stepping in for Joe Tooney, and ended up getting a contract with the Commanders. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it's like anybody else. Like you said, the guys who didn't work out are forgettable, but the players that showed up here have been really important to them winning Super Bowls, and so you have to give them credit for that.
Yeah. Allegretti started 2 Super Bowls.
Oh,
Uh,
Now one of them he probably doesn't want to claim to because
yeah.
it's against Tampa Bay, but he started two.
Allegretti is an excellent player, an excellent pick, I should say, a good, solid player. And I wish that they, relied on that more, that they could get that guy and, found a way to use their resource. If you're going to trade up to get the meaningful guy, right? Like, cause you can get Nick Allegretti. Like he's a great backup. But I think one of the problems, and this does not demean the pick is great. And I have an A for them in round 7 as well. But I look at those and go, you're pretty good down there. Like, trust in yourself to get value in those rounds. Figure out what you're doing in the 7th. Do it more in the 5th and 6th as well. But like, I will say this, Bo Peep Keys, they did not have that pick that year. And they traded the next year's 6th to get him. And he was 0. I think I saw him last year, if not 2 years ago. He was in somebody's camp again, so he does keep kind of hanging around the league. But that one is a problem. But, to Sam's point, there are lots of running backs. I'm not as high on the Isaiah Pacheco one. There are running backs that don't get drafted, see Priest Holmes, that are very effective in the NFL. It's a great pick, don't get me wrong. And I like the Jalen Watson pick. I think they've done a fantastic job in there. But, my frustration is like they need to believe in that a little bit more.
But you know what that is, Soren, though? That is, and, if you're in the war rooms, those 6th, 7th round picks are picks that the scouts are fighting for. And they're not fighting for the guys who are, well, this guy's running a 4.34. He benches, he squats 200 pounds. They're saying, this guy's got great heart. You should see this guy, the way he practices. Those intangibles come more into play. And in the earlier round, it's just like the super hot chick walking around.
Yeah.
The supermodel. We got to have her, right? And so they're getting better value because they're getting better people.
You're telling me Nick Allegretti can cook. He's got a great personality.
That's right. That's right.
Great job.
Mow the lawn for you. Yeah.
Not going to leech off your bank account, right?
Right?
Yeah. Okay. I see where you're going with this. Yeah, I like it. Okay, so we all liked round 7 here. So now we've studied what Brett Veach has done. Sam, what needs to happen for the Chiefs to earn an A in this year's draft?
Yeah, so let's go through their picks. They've got second to last of the first round, 63rd overall in the second round. But then they pick, third pick of the third round, late in the third round, fourth round, and then 3 7. So they don't have a 5th or 6th round pick, but instead they get an early third round pick.
By the way, when we see at least my grades on the 5th and 6th round, D+ and C, I'm okay with that. Right? They've got 3 7s. The problem is they'll use those 7s to move up into the 5th round. That's the problem.
Well, so my point is they've got a slightly better. They have, I would say, actually a very clearly better draft capital than what they usually have, because I would rather have early third round than I'd rather have 5th, 6th. So I think you need, on average out of this, you would need 2 starters plus 2 regular contributors to your roster. So in order to grade this higher, in order to grade this as a good draft, I think it has to clear that bar. I think you'd have to get 3 starters out of it. You could say potentially one of them has a Pro Bowl season at some point, and then you get those extra 1 or 2 contributors beyond that. And I think you've had a really good draft.
Yeah. What makes this year a success for you, Jeff?
Difference makers. I mean, that to me is super imperative for this team moving forward, because they're moving into this era now where they can't rely on Travis Kelce, Chris Jones saving the day, right? These guys are getting older. You saw it in the Super Bowl. They didn't produce at all. Mahomes is still going to be putting up big numbers, but all these draft picks have been successful because they've been playing with superstar players, and you have to start finding more superstar players in the coming years in these drafts. So I don't think it's going to be just one Pro Bowl player. You probably have to find a couple who can get to that level in this draft, the next draft, to start staying in that conversation as far as winning championships. So I think they got to get a couple home run guys out of this.
I kind of feel like this is one where we've mentioned it. I'm really intrigued by how they're going to attack this, because they're signing up all these guys in the positions that don't matter, and we all agree that getting an edge rusher and certainly getting a left tackle appears to be something that they can't do unless they fire a bunch of picks to move up there. So is that what they're going to do? Are they looking at Trent McDuffie saying, do they have a tackle? Is it Simmons at Ohio State? And they say, we're going to have to get to 2021. And they're going to move that high third-round pick to do it and go get a guy that they know can play, that they can put in and know that they can play at a premium position. Or is it the year where they say, okay, we've got all these guys that are making big banks, and now we've got to have a bunch of cheap guys, and they trade down. I think they could do it either way. But what they can't do is try to do a little bit of both. Like you can't feel, I think they've got to either embrace, we need numbers and be looking to move back and add to their draft, or they need to say, we've got to solve left tackle. We see a guy. To me, Simmons is the only guy that looks like he might be a legitimate starting left tackle. And because he's got the knee injury, maybe he's in a range where you could go get him. So if they went all in to go get him, and by all in, I mean, what did they give up? I think they gave up a third to move up and get McDuffie. If they did that, and I think it would take the higher one, I hope that they do it, and then they recognize that they're pretty good in the late rounds. Get some late round picks thrown back at them, right? That's one of the things the Rams always do is get some extra picks so you get some extra shots at it. But I think for this draft to be successful, they're going to have to be bold one way or the other. Either bold in picking up even more picks to try to throw numbers at a lot of solutions, or they're going to have to be bold to go up and know that we solved left tackle. If we can come out of this draft and we solved left tackle, then we're in a lot better spot. So I think they've got to do one or the other. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think, to that point, I would add that it needs to be, to my criteria, it needs to be premium position starters as well. Like I view that a lot differently if they get your left tackle, for example. I mean, on my grades, I constantly considered what position they're getting to. One of the reasons that I think I had, the first round perhaps graded higher than you guys did is because I looked at it and said, okay, this is an all-pro cornerback. Yeah. This is a very solid starter at edge rusher. Xavier Worthy at least could sniff a Pro Bowl at some point in his career as a wide receiver. And so I viewed the second round the same way and said their best second round pick. I think at least like Rashee Rice is going to get paid more than Nick Bolton is. He's going to get paid more than Creed Humphrey is as the highest paid center in the game. Like these first couple rounds and even that early third round pick, when you've got 4 picks in the top 100, I would be highly disappointed if at least three are not these premium positions.
Do you agree with me? Like first round pick needs just, unless it's a quarterback, needs to start right away. Second round pick needs to start at some point during the year. Third round pick needs to be a starter sometime in his career, and then find another starter somewhere else.
That's a lot. I'm just telling you, like 4 starters out of a draft is a huge haul. When you look at over the years, like there's models out there that do like percentage of chances based on history of the guy becoming starters. Even that last pick of the first round only has like a 60% chance of becoming a 3-year starter. Like that's actually where it is. So like getting,
but that includes all the teams that suck, right? That
it's easier. It's easier to start for bad teams.
It is, but they also make dumb decisions, right? And so I get it. And listen, I'm saying this is what you shoot for.
That's what I'm saying. The expectation.
What do I have? 7 picks. I shoot for 7 starters.
Well, but I think you also need guys to play special teams and cover kicks so that your valuable corners don't have to go, get beat up doing that. And maybe that's less now because of the way the kickoff rules work and those kind of things. But I think there's some spots where you're taking legitimate depth. I think you can get later, and if there's a big physical running quarterback that you think might be able to throw, get him and run a goddamn quarterback sneak.
Well, they had that with Carson Wentz. I mean, I pointed out he was the most successful, quarterback sneak guy in the game. But your point, Soren, the application I would use for it is the premium position. It's like if you view it that way, potentially getting like long-term players, that's why you do side with the premium position players as opposed to later in the draft when you're taking depth type pieces, because that's what else stands out. This exercise is, you mentioned like the BJ Thompsons, the Joshua Kandos, when they try and get depth at these like premium positions later in the draft, it really hasn't worked out. What's worked out later in the draft is when they've taken these non-premium positions like left guard with Nick Allegretti, running back with Isaiah Pacheco. That's why you take the premium positions early, because you can find those non-premium positions later and turn them into starters. And that needs to be part of their lesson here. I mean, you've got you've got other players who are, tight end at Noah Gray in 5th round as a totally serviceable player. You've got to stack. There's not many chances. In fact, we've not seen it where the Chiefs have had 4 picks in the first 100 in Brett Veach's era, that you've got a chance to actually get some premium position players and take some chances here.
Yeah. It's a big draft. We all agree with that. That with all the money they've got tied up in guys, that they're going to have to hit on some players that are going to play over the next couple of years, because they're going to need them for sure. Listen, don't forget our great sponsors, Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot, free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews. Every project comes with a written warranty. If you own a business, you got a parking lot, make sure you make a great first and last impression with a smooth, brightly striped parking lot. Call Gann Asphalt and Concrete today at 816-484-3338. They're online at GannAsphalt.com. And our friends at Whataburger, they're open right now. That's right. Whataburger's open 24 hours. You can check them out. Breakfast served 11 p to 11 a. You can go check out the chicken fajita tacos, my absolute favorites, right now at Whataburger. For Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, NFL.com, Sam McDowell from the Kansas City Star, my name is Soren Petro, saying thank you very much for joining us here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast.